Appetit, The Importance of Food by Maya Smith. Food is symbolic of love when words are inadequate. Dr. Alan Wolfcroft. Dr. Alan Wolfcroft is a psychologist who specializes in helping people when they are grieving the loss of their loved ones. What he's trying to say in this quote is that even if you don't have the words to say to a person who you love who is going through something hard, you can always give them a dish that represents your love and to show them that you care even though you don't know exactly what to say. My thesis is that although many things shape and define us, food is one of the most important things that defines us in everyday life. Next, I have a video talking about how food and love are directly connected to one another and how they affect our everyday lives, from birth to adulthood. That video just begun to show how food and love are often combined in our heads, and they're often very hard to separate from one another. The roadmap to my presentation, there are four main things that I'll be focusing on: the groundwork of taste and how it works, the psychology of the brain and how it affects what foods we eat and how much, the culture of a person and how it affects what foods they feel comfortable with, the background of a person and how that impacts a lot of different aspects of their food culture. So first, I need to give a basic groundwork to the taste, how taste works and how it affects humans when we eat food. Taste is derived when a piece of food goes onto your tongue and it interacts with thousands of proteins called taste buds. These taste buds have 5 different senses: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami, the Japanese word that means the taste of fat on the mouth. These 5 senses affect how a person tastes things and what foods they are prone to like by the number of times they occur in a person's tongue. The more of a taste or the less of a taste buds you have, the more likely you are to crave that food and to eat more of it. For instance, if I lacked salty foods or if I lacked salty taste buds, then I would therefore eat a lot more salty foods and therefore I would tend to enjoy salty foods more than a person who doesn't lack salty taste buds. This is the basis of how taste works and why everybody's taste is different and their palate is different from one another. Now I'll be talking about the psychology of food and how that impacts what foods a person eats and how much of the foods they eat. The main reason that human beings or any species eat food is in order to survive and to gain nutrients from the food and to live a long, healthy life. Now, the one thing that separates the human brain or the humans is the fact that there are two main things competing for what foods you eat. It's your body and being healthy and getting nutrients versus what your brain is craving. The human brain actually tends to crave certain chemicals in order to get stimulated and to have pleasurable sensations. For instance, if I drink coffee every day and get that dose of caffeine every day, it's not necessarily because the food is making my body healthier or helping any of my organs or anything like that. It is simply because the brain is saying, I like this chemical of caffeine, keep feeding it to me. It has absolutely nothing to do with the health content of the food. And this is where it comes to making choices and decisions about what foods you're going to eat and why you're going to eat them. Another way that psychology impacts what foods you eat and how your body processes them is how you feel while eating the food. I have an example for you. So, if I'm eating cake at my best friend's birthday party, I'm surrounded by the people I love and our families and friends, and we're super happy and enjoying ourselves, and you eat cake, then you actually will get the most benefits out of that cake. You will metabolize the most nutrients out of it and get all of the possible benefits you can get from eating cake, even though it's not the most nutrient-dense food. Now here's another circumstance. I'm sitting at home feeling guilty and sad, and I find some cake and eat it. Now if I eat cake in this circumstance, my body is going to treat it as something that's not that great for me, and therefore it will not get that much nutrient from it. It will actually have the most negative effect possible if I'm in a bad or upset mood while eating the cake. The mood of a person while eating a certain food, or any food for that matter, can affect how your body metabolizes it and what good it does for you. Next, I have a little brain teaser. So here are two circles with two black circles in them. Now you guys have to guess which black circle is bigger. Actually, they're the same size. This goes to show you how your brain can trick you into eating more or less food. If you eat a certain amount of food on a small plate, then your brain will tell you that you're full and that you're satisfied, and your stomach will agree with you because you've eaten enough food. But if you eat the same amount of food on a larger plate, your brain will actually tell you to keep eating even though your stomach disagrees that you're full. The size of the plate has a large impact on how much you eat if you solely listen to your brain and what it's telling you to do. Another way that the psychology of a person can impact what foods they eat and how much is by the color of the plate they're eating off of. If the color of the plate matches the color of the food a person's eating, then they will actually eat more of that food. Whereas if the color is directly contrasting to that, then they will eat less of that food because they can see it and their brain is telling them that they're full. These are a couple of the ways that the psychology of a person impacts how much of a food they eat and how their body reacts to the foods that they're eating. Next, I'm going to be talking about the culture of a person and how that impacts what foods they're eating. The first thing that I need to do is define culture. Culture is a defined set of standards in a certain society that are learned and are not genetic. Culture, as you can see from this picture, impacts many different parts of the human experience. It can impact their clothing, a person's language, their education, their music, and obviously the foods that they eat. The culture of a person strongly impacts what foods they eat and what they feel comfortable with. A person's culture can impact what foods they eat by what they grow up with and what they feel comfortable with. For instance, if you grow up always eating a certain food on holidays or on special occasions, then that food will have a special meaning to you and will be highly valued to you. If you keep eating this food, even when you're far away from your home, it will still bring back the memories, the people, and the things that it meant to you when you were at your home country, even though you could be thousands of miles away. Some people disagree with me though. They say that you can never truly recreate a dish outside of its country of origin. You don't have the access to the exact same ingredients, the same spices, the same water, and so on and so forth. But I strongly disagree. I feel that food is a lot more than just a set of ingredients on a plate. Food is how you feel while eating something, what memories it brings up, why you started eating it in the first place. Food can impact every part of your life, and it can bring back those memories of the things that it impacted. Even though it won't be the exact same in your different place that you're in, the food will still have a positive impact on you, and it can still bring back your memories. But the one thing that culture does say is that it differentiates all the peoples of the world. There are many different cultures and many different peoples. An example of this was shown by photographer Peter Menzel. He went around the world and his project called Hungry Planet, A Week of Food. He took pictures of a week of food of countries all over the world and published it. And I have 4 examples here. First off, we're going to start with Chad, an African country. There are many things that impact food culture and therefore differentiate different countries from one another. The main thing that impacts Chad's food culture is its economic stance. Chad has a fairly low economic place, and therefore they don't have a lot of access to a large variety of food. This results in the peoples of Chad often eating simple foods like rice, beans, and grains, instead of a large variety of sources of food. And another thing that impacts them is the fact that they don't have a lot of access to food because they are so poor. They can't get, foods from different countries or continents because it costs more and they can't afford it. Next, I'll be talking about Japan. Japan is a country whose food culture is mainly defined by 2 interlocking concepts: their geography and their natural resources. The thing that literally separates Japan is the fact that it's an island country. This makes their food culture strongly surrounded by the ocean and foods that they can plentifully get from the ocean. As you can see, there's a lot of seafood, seaweed, and other sea-derived things, or foods that have been imported via the sea to Japan. This impacts their food culture and what foods that are more plentiful to them. The next country I have here is Ecuador. The main thing that impacts Ecuador's food culture is the fact that it is a country of low economic standards, but another thing that impacts their food culture is the priorities they set in their life and their culture and how they look at food. Even though Ecuador has a low economic standing and they don't have a lot of access to a large variety of food, as you can see from this picture, the family looks very happy and look like they really enjoy each other's company. The main reason that this is seen is because in Ecuador, food is one of the main things that brings the family unit together. Every meal is shared with one another and they place a high priority on food and having it every day together. Even though they don't have access to a lot of different kinds of foods, they still cherish every moment and every morsel together. Next, there's a picture of the United States and a week of food in the US. As you can see from this picture, the main thing that separates United States food culture is the fact that we have a lot more processed foods and things that are easy to make or pre-made already. This shows that the main thing that impacts American food culture is the time that it takes to eat the food and how quick it can be made. This also shows that in America we don't place a lot of importance on the quality of food or making dishes at home by hand. It's more on how fast can I get this done, how quickly can I make food for my family and get back to work. The next thing that I'm going to talk about is the background of a person and how that affects what kinds of foods they eat. The background of a person is where they grew up, their family, their friends, and who they are accustomed to. The background of a person impacts what foods they eat because if you see people close to you eating a certain kind of food, then you're more likely to eat that food. The foods that you feel comfortable with are all learned from the people around you, and the fact that they're safe eating a certain kind of food makes you feel that you're safe eating that food. Another way that the background of a person affects food is the fact that food can easily introduce a person to a new background that they had no idea about or knew very little about. For instance, you can eat a dish from a culture that you know very little about, and by eating that dish, gain an interest and connect with people you would have never thought you would connect with, who have a different background than you, but you ultimately have many things in common. For my community outreach, I did a cultural awareness potluck. The main idea of this potluck was to have people from all different countries and all different cultures come together with a dish of food representing their background and sharing this food and opening a dialect on things that are important to them and creating a bond with different people. Not to brag, but my potluck was very successful. We had people from all over the world, including the Middle East, Europe, here in America, and South America. These people all came together for one common reason: food. Even though we came together over something as simple as eating lunch together, we ultimately dived into talking about how a girl from Jordan had moved to America and how her transition period was going, and how it was kind of hard to get used to different cultures and norms here in America. This conversation was very interesting and it led to many different relationships and bonds that would not have been there without starting with this cultural awareness potluck. It all started from a plate of food. Although many things shape and define us in our everyday life, food is one of the most important things that defines us. Thank you. Any questions?